Welcome to StabtheDragon Productions, episode number 76, book review number 4. This is Saturday, October 15th, 2022. Today, we'll be looking at Purgatory Shore, the Artilleryman series by Taylor Anderson. New York, Ace Publishing, 2021, 580 pages. I read this book October 3rd through 11th of this year, 2022. Outstanding. Genre. This is science fiction, broadly speaking, but specifically alternate universe. Score. I've got kind of a weird scoring system, but out of 35 possible points, this book scores a 35. Letter grade, A++. A little bit of the background and comparison. I became acquainted with Taylor Anderson's Destroyerman series books. Here's the first one, Into the Storm, about 12 or 13 years ago. And I even met him at a book signing in Fort Worth and got a couple of books autographed. I must admit that I only read the first 4 or 5 books. Then I got busy with other things, other series, and never finished them. They were not the first of that genre that I had delved into. Science fiction alternate universe. The first such series I read that kind of matches that description would be the Lost Regiment series by William Forstchen. That was about 25 years ago, I think. And I absolutely loved that series. Kind of a similar situation. You've got a Civil War regiment that's on a ship headed to engage the South somewhere. And they get caught up in a storm, and poof, they're in another world, another universe, and have to deal with monsters and stuff. And that series, The Lost Regiment, was outstanding. I absolutely loved it. But I guess what somewhat turned me off to the Destroyerman series, because I loved so much about it, but there was one thing that kind of got to me, and that was the idea of talking lemurs and lizard people. So, somehow aliens don't bother me, monsters don't bother me, but talking lemurs and lizards, yeah, that kind of bothered me. Otherwise, the plot was great, the characterization and action were all great. The historical detail was magnificent. There was so much to love about the series. I wish I'd finished it, bottom line. And maybe now I will. In fact, after reading Purgatory Shore, I have dug this up from my science fiction collection and have started reading it again, and I want to finish that series now. It's just an outstanding series, so I think I will finish that, because it's going to be a couple of years before the next Artilleryman comes out in paperback, so it'll be a year or two at least. Well, where does Anderson get some of his ideas? S.M. Stirling's Emberverse series, I think, is another alternative universe series that I've read. All but the last one or two, I think. I need to go back and finish that. I think you see a pattern there. But the Emberverse series by Stirling, there's a relationship here with Anderson, because Anderson in this book discusses some religious things and shows a religious cult-like thing. In this book, it's called The Dominion. In Stirling's books, it was called The Cut, Church Universal and Triumphant. And there's a lot of similarities between these two groups, right? So there's a lot of action and storyline that's similar there. But also, as I mentioned, Forstchen's Lost Regiment series, boy, there's a tremendous amount of similarities there. And of course, there's a lot of connections between the Artilleryman and the Destroyerman that at first are kind of implied, and then you catch on and realize there's definitely a relationship there. But if you go back into some of the classics of science fiction, Edgar Rice Burroughs and the Pellucidar series, or The Land That Time Forgot, or maybe Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's book, The Lost World. So, there's some relationships here that I think you find in Taylor Anderson's work. Okay, so if you like any of the books that I've mentioned, you should really enjoy this one as well. So my recommendation, if you like alternate universe series books, dinosaurs, if you like fiction that includes patriotic American history, if you want science fiction that deals with religion in a very respectful and interesting way, man, this book is a must-read. The action, the characterization, the plot, the romance possibly that may be in this book, they're all outstanding. I give this book my absolute highest recommendation. So now let's get into the details. First section for 5 points, is the book believable? Now, for my taste, I like my science fiction to be reasonably believable, especially near future stuff. Okay, what's going to happen in the next 50 years, man? If that's believable, you know, I'm on board. Fantasy is a little bit different. An alternate universe is similar to fantasy. It's not a subgenre of fantasy and science fiction both, I guess. Well, the overall idea and plot may be sheer escapism and may not be believable. Are the details and characters and basic storyline believable? In Purgatory Shore, Taylor Anderson writes in such a detailed yet clear and forceful manner that yes, it's believable. It's eminently believable. I consider myself an amateur historian. I've got a BA in history, a lot of graduate hours in history for my master's. In American history is one of my areas of concentration, and I can say that Anderson absolutely nails this period of American history. The 1840s, the Mexican War, the Army, the age of manifest destiny, sectional strife, the political question of the day about slavery. Furthermore, his handling of religion, particularly Presbyterian Calvinism, and then the Dominion, which in some ways I think represents Islam of today. The way he handles all that is superb. And this was quite surprising, as most science fiction authors that I've read who touch on religion get it so very wrong. Now, Ben Bova, in his series, the Galactic series or Solar System series, I forgot what it's called now, Ben Bova has some religious stuff in there that's actually pretty good too. But usually science fiction gets it wrong. Taylor Anderson gets it absolutely right. And again, I was just pleasantly surprised by that. The geography, the dinosaurs, all this adds a touch of realism and believability. So 5 out of 5 points for being believable. The action in this book, for 5 points, action. The action is multifaceted because it involves the U.S. Army of the 1840s, the Texas Rangers of the 1840s, and that was a nice touch. Various groups that replicate the Comanche. The Comanche Indians are mentioned several times. You've got the Mexican Army of the 1840s involved with this. And then you've got hordes of religious fanatics armed with muskets and stuff. So the detail that Anderson provides in this book for the artillery sequences, the artillery engagements, oh, that's amazing. And he, in the acknowledgments to the book, in the very back of the book, he references a guy that I know. His name's Jim McNabb, and I'm sure Jim advised him on the artillery sequences. More on that later. The action in this book is just, it's very detailed. It is war, and there are monsters involved, and so it's gruesome. It's very explicit violence at times. Combat always is. And so, you know, there's parts of the book that may not be for the squeamish. You know, the dinosaur details and that action is just amazing. And the details of the weapons is very rich and very precise. And the tactics are also very believable, very realistic, complex as they should be. So for action, 5 out of 5 points. Technical accuracy for another 5 points here. The accuracy of the firearms I've already mentioned, but Anderson goes into a lot of detail about the uniform and equipment that's also very accurate. He even seems accurate with the discussion of dinosaurs with the level of knowledge that the people in the 1840s had. It's his portrayal, and you'll see the same thing in the Destroyerman series, the accuracy of dinosaurs and things in this book, Into the Storm, as well. So the accuracy of the cultural attitudes, political ideas of the time period, fantastic. He gets he gets the sectional strife right. That's building up in the 1840s. Discussions on the Constitution were amazing. Slavery, manifest destiny, religion, all of these cultural things he just nails. And he does it in a way that's enjoyable to read. I mean, there is not a boring stretch in this book at all. This book could almost be used in a history class for the antebellum U.S. The level of accuracy here is very high, and it's not strained, it's not artificial, it's truly enjoyable. 5 out of 5. Characterization. Now, the main character is Captain Lewis Casey, kind of a cynical regular Army officer, a graduate of the U.S. Military Academy class of 1830. Casey's got a rough family life, an abusive father in his background, and so he's a hard man, but he's a good man. He's a junior leader, just a captain, but a lot of experience in his background. He's thrust into the role of being a general in a world that is very different from what he left behind. So there's a lot of leadership involved and explained in this book, which again is a level of technical accuracy and characterization that is amazing. So Casey goes from some degree of self-doubt and limited experience to being very successful in an incredibly short amount of time. He comes across as real, as genuine, as a man of single-minded excellence. Another main character, Captain Giles Anson of the Texas Volunteer Rangers, right? He's a grizzled killer who also has a very tragic past. He's hunted and fought Comanche and Mexicans. So here we watch a hard man of the frontier gradually become more civilized. And the friendship of these two grows. And so there's a lot of character development going on there. So for characterization, 5 out of 5 points. How about supporting characters? Now, supporting characters is a fairly long list. And several characters are shown in quite a bit of detail with considerable growth demonstrated. You get privates who become lieutenants and the growth that they experience there. And there's lots of surprises along the way. You see the typical bully who's a sergeant who's abusive and what happens with him. And this characterization of the supporting characters is a major strength of the book. The richness here is really good. So one of the characters that should be mentioned is Leon Anson, the son, question mark, or parentheses, of Captain Anson. I don't want to give you a spoiler here, but the younger Anson has a ton of surprises, and in fact, may really be a major character here, not just a supporting character. Then you've got Colonel DeRussy. He's an interesting character in that he's a politician who got an army appointment as a colonel, and that was a common thing back then. The politics of colonels today also. Though he outranks Captain Casey significantly, he does some things like turns over the command of this lost regiment to this captain so that both can use their skills for the greater good. There's a preacher, Presbyterian preacher named Harkin, fiery Calvinist, full of surprises. Watching him grow into his role is fascinating for me because I used to be a preacher. And of course, there's the Artillery Sergeant McNabb, named for our mutual friend, Jim McNabb. Again, the list here could be much longer because Anderson's writing, including the first series, The Destroyerman, he develops characters, not just the main characters, but the supporting staff. He really develops them quite well. Now let's talk about cover art. Oh, well, 5 points for supporting characters, 5 points. Let's talk about cover art. Cover art on sci-fi novels has always been a fascinating thing for me. On rare occasions, maybe the cover art literally has next to nothing to do with the story or characters, but in this case, the cover art absolutely drew me in as it had Mexican war soldiers shooting a field piece at a T-Rex, right? And there's a sinking ship in the background. If that doesn't get your attention, nothing will. Now, I could wish for more art on the back cover and less blurbs, right? Man, I'd like some more art back there. Some books do that. They wrap around. This book deserves to be made into like a graphic novel or a separate book full of nothing but art depicting the story. The visual imagery that Anderson creates in his writing is just very vivid. It's detailed. The descriptions are amazing. So 5 out of 5 points for the cover art. And you can kind of see the same thing in the Destroyerman series as well. There's some very good cover art that really goes along with the story quite well. And on this one, there is art on the back, but it's almost a duplicate of what's on the front, so that doesn't really count. But so for cover art, 5 out of 5 points. Bonus points. As an Army veteran with 1 degree in history and another in theology and a lifelong reader of history, science fiction, and theology, this book has it all. The religious component of this book was a very nice surprise, and it just was exceptionally well done. There's an aspect to this book that seems to tell me that it was written with our current world situation in mind, and that radical Islam is doing what the Dominion in this book is doing, and that part of our fight today is indeed at a deeply spiritual level. Anderson makes that case very clearly. So if you want some theological fiction, man, here it is. I mean, wrapping theological fiction into alternate universe science fiction. Wow, that's great. Another factor in the bonus consideration is that one of the supporting characters, Sergeant McNabb, the artillery sergeant, along with the acknowledgments in the back, he thanks Jim McNabb, along with several dozen others. But this Jim McNabb I used to work with at Rackspace. He's a Civil War reenactor. How cool is that? And he happens to own not 1, but 2 artillery pieces. Go figure. So I'm sure, and see, Taylor Anderson's from our part of North Texas as well. So he's local. And so Jim McNabb is local. Taylor Anderson's local. So yeah, they linked up at some point. So there's just a surprising amount of bonuses here in the book. And the romance thing was very subtle, very long-lasting throughout the first book, and it's just the hints of it right now, but you can kind of see which direction this is going. So that's really good too. Bonus 5 points. My total score then is 35 out of 35 possible points. Letter grade A++. My recommendation. This is one of those rare, virtually perfect science fiction novels that will rate up there with the classics for me. The attention to historical and technical detail, the many outstanding characters, the religion component, the science component of the dinosaurs, and the geography of what things were like, millions of years ago, and the romance there. This book has it all. And talking cats. There you go. There are talking cats in this book. See, the problem that I had with the Destroyerman series is I couldn't get past the talking lizards and talking lemurs, right? Well, this book's got talking cats and lizard people and all that stuff too. Well, I'm finally over the hump there, and I'm able to get into that, and so that's now a bonus for here. But let me say that the talking cat thing, maybe a combination of Larry Niven's Kazenti series and maybe David Weber's tree cats that are telepathic. Maybe some of that played into this. So for this book, I simply cannot find any flaws at all. Giving a perfect score, kind of rare for me, maybe. I'm now going to, have to, like I said, go through the Destroyerman series and read all, 14 or 15 books, however many there are in that. Conclusion. This was just a great book. I'm so looking forward to the rest. Okay? But now, a quick note about this show's future. I'm running into some difficulties with my work schedule, lots of overtime, which is a blessing from the Lord for sure, but it obviously cuts into my programming, preparation time, and reading time, study time. So I may be falling behind in my whiskey reviews for a little bit. We'll see. And then there's the midterm elections that are scheduled for the first Tuesday of November, which is just 2.5 weeks away. And I always like to do shows about current events as well. So I'm not sure if my schedule is going to allow me to do all this, but we'll see. So that's it for Stab the Dragon tonight. Buy this book. Read it. Share it. Talk about it. In hoc signo vinces, out here.